Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles. I am delighted to be welcoming back Jon from our amazing film festival in partnership with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. But for those that haven't seen his fantastic documentary of Manzanal, let's take a look at a clip.
Prefiere simplemente bloquearlo, quizás mucha gente es así. Y al bloquearlo obviamente no transmitís el mensaje a los demás y se va borrando la historia poco a poco.
Jon, I'm so happy that I want to give you a big virtual hug from here to celebrate you and thank you for your film. Thank you for bringing it to us. For those that haven't seen your documentary, tell us a brief synopsis.
Yeah, the film is it's just a short documentary, filmed 16 millimeter, black and white. I filmed most of it on a Bolex, which is, a camera that's not used anymore very much. And it's a film that captures the powerful testimony of a woman named Rufina Amaya, who is the first known survivor of the CIA-backed massacre of her village, El Mozote, in 1981 in El Salvador. And I brought together 11 other Latinx millennial witnesses to hear her testimony for the first time. And I filmed their reactions and I, recorded their responses to something that is very little known in the history of Latin America, specifically Central America and El Salvador.
Well, love to Rufina because she is a special human being. And I'm so glad that you connected together, to kind of take her through, these horrific experiences that no human being should have to go through. Listen, Jon, it was one of the best short documentaries I've ever seen and one of the most important stories that could be captured on a film, particularly for people of El Salvador and for people around the world to never, ever forget and that can never, ever and should be not repeated. I'm so glad that you put this film together. It was probably one of the most horrific films to watch, and it's horrible because this was a true experience for people that they had to go through, and unbelievable. And I just want to know for you personally, where did the inspiration come for you in wanting to tell this story, from 1981, not that long ago, but long enough for a next generation to maybe not know or forget, and then mixing that with millennials of today to know about this story? Where did that inspire you to kind of turn it into a project?
I think so my mother is from El Salvador. She fled during a civil war with Honduras, a neighboring country, known as the Soccer Wars. She fled her country during that war, and very similar things were happening. The armed forces of the country were going around and literally kidnapping young girls and women from villages, to do horrible things. And her older brother had put her and my aunt, her sister, in a car with very little knowledge of where they were going, and just they came here. And my mother was undocumented for about 14 years while I was a child, and we didn't know these things. But she always had this tremendous fear, and it always seemed very nonsensical, this like irrational fear that she had of government, of agencies, of people tearing us apart, not telling people where we're from, not telling people about their immigration. And as I started to grow older, I started to try to understand this fear that I didn't know where it was coming from. And when I was around 19 years old, I happened upon a book by Richard Donner called The Massacre at El Mozote. And I learned about Rufina for the first time. And for a decade after that, until now, almost 2 decades now, I carried Rufina around like my patron saint, and her courage that she showed in testifying, giving her testimony about the massacre and naming the forces, naming people, and also being able to go back to that village afterwards as a woman who had lost everything there and try to rebuild it. That courage just stayed with me, and it just pushed me further, getting to, you know, college, being the first one in my family to go to college, being the first one in my family to graduate college, being the first one in my family to do all the things that I'm doing. I think it was Rufina's courage, I think, that pushed me along, and also built an understanding between me and my mother. I started to understand her fears more, and I started to understand where that trauma came from. And I happened upon this project, this opportunity to do this project. It was a black and white. We had to do it on black and white. We had to do it on film. And I just immediately thought of her. And I immediately thought of what if I told people about her and filmed them, learning about her for the first time. And that's how that was the genesis of this project. And I was lucky enough to be supported by different organizations out here in the Bay Area, and brought these people together. It was an amazing journey. Therapy sessions, each one, I can't even, you know, I'm super grateful that I got the opportunity to make it.
I'm so glad, Jon. I'm so glad that this, you know, carrying, her, Rufina as your patron saint, and then actually getting to make a movie, you know, about her story. I bet that felt pretty powerful for you, and obviously knowing what your mom has gone through and experienced as well. Did it feel amazing that you could be the person that, you know, you care so much, but you get to articulate her story and then bring that to, you know, young people currently today, to help them understand as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most amazing part about this experience of capturing Rufina's story and sharing it with people was the moments of catharsis after sharing, after recording. I mean, there was many times I had to stop recording. People were breaking down, and
yeah,
that's not the type of filmmaker I want to be, or, you know, aim to be. And we literally were just hugging each other, crying with each other, because our parents, we were starting to understand this silence that happens in our household from our parents, not wanting to talk about this, not wanting to, you know, relive these experiences. And it's their right. Nobody should have to relive those experiences. But it leaves us, my generation and the generations that come from these, you know, horrible forced migration stories. It leaves us with this void that we just cannot fill. We constantly cannot understand it. And we walk around with this grief that we don't know where the grief comes from. Mm-hmm. So to have Rufina's story kind of stand in for our parents' stories, to show us, you know, what was happening in this country at this time, was super cathartic for me and the other participants. So it was just being able to share that, just being able to hold that space, that safe space with them, was the best part of making this film. Yeah.
I think, Jon, this is, you know, one example of pure evil, a story, and it should never be forgotten, and we should never ever go back to a place where this exists. But I think it's also a very important story for just, you know, there's a lot to be learned in this particular country about how people are treated, and the lack of understanding of what one has had to go through, and how devastating that has been, and we don't realize. And I think your film should be seen by anyone, not just people that can relate to it, but people that don't realize what one has go through just to get here and exist and be here, and how important that is. And also, you know, the greatness of being El Salvadorian, and having that as part of you, and you don't want these horrible, horrific things to lose your great culture and identity and who you are. And there needs to be more understanding from people who are lack of educated and see your film, to really know the pain to exist, to strive, to be together as a family, for love, for everything. Was that something you wanted to kind of underline in this particular film?
Yeah, I think the ghost in the room, so to speak, when it was making this film, I wanted to make a film that, in not so many, you know, misunderstandable or misrepresentable ways, could say almost very clearly, without naming it, without talking about immigration, just say that it's not a cut and dry issue. I mean, people that come to this country aren't coming here to exploit some sort of a loophole in a system, and they're not just like middle class or upper class people coming to college. There's a lot of those who travel here are traveling because they're fleeing
Yes.
horrible circumstances.
Yes.
And beyond that, what they do once they get here, build families, create culture, make pupuserias happen, make
Yes.
all these wonderful wonderful bodegas and all these things that we
Yes.
build here to try to maintain our soul, our spirit, and our heart. Like, these are the things that I want to celebrate. I mean, it's not just look at what horrible things happen, but look at what this generation, look at us. Look how beautiful we are. Look how like brave we are. Look how brave our parents are. And we are our grandparents and our great grandparents and our own parents' wildest dreams. We are here, and it's our turn now, this generation, to secure the rights of another generation fleeing other things to be able to do the same, to have the same opportunities.
Yeah, and I think, the fact you mixed it with people that have maybe have parents that have come from other places, like, to really understand what people have gone through to get where we are today, and how, like you said, this generation can now keep that progression moving forward in such a powerful way. This light on this story, I mean, I really think, Rufina should be made a saint. I mean, I really think she has been through so much, and she is, I mean, not many people could survive that experience, like psychologically, let alone anything else. And, I'm so glad that you shed a light on this, because this is a very, very important documentary. And this should never be forgotten, and we should constantly, use this as a way of being better, doing better, understanding, learning from each other, being better humans, and creating a better world for each other. And I'm just so glad that I could feel your passion. I love that it was in black and white, and it was a very, very hard watch, but it's history, and it happened, and it existed. What was the hardest thing that you had kind of making the project? What was the kind of most difficult things? For me, I don't know if I would have managed psychologically, just emotionally, but how is it for you?
I think that was the hardest part. There was definitely an emotional and a psychological toll of, and I think I'm probably going to get emotional.
Yeah, of course.
Of having to listen to Rufina's story over. Out of all the witnesses, had to witness it, 12 times. And that was rough. It was rough because there was a part of me that I didn't want to grow numb to it, but I just was so exhausted of crying after every session, coming home and not being able to sleep. But, for me as a filmmaker, I don't want to make films where I don't put any skin in the game, so to speak, I'm just going to a neighborhood, or I'm taking a story and I'm saying, look at this. I need to when I make a film, if I'm going to make a film that talks about these tough issues, or that, puts people in a vulnerable position, I feel that the responsibility to be there with them. And I was proud that I was able to do that, but it was very, very, very taxing. It taxed me emotionally and psychologically, for sure.
Well, Jon, I just want to say that as I was watching it, before I even met you, I was watching it, and my goodness me, it's one of the hardest things to watch, because you just don't want any innocent human being, to go through such pain, particularly women and children. You can't even get your head around it. And the fact that the way she spoke about it was so truthful and raw and real, and she didn't hide anything. She was really saying what happened. And sometimes people are scared of hearing the actual truth and the realness of it all. For all those people that sadly passed away in this massacre, I know they're all looking down on you, thanking you for making sure that what they went through, you see them, and you're speaking to them, and through spiritually you're shining a light on these innocent people, and for humans to learn and do better. And so I really felt that watching it. I felt that energy of all the people that had to suffer to unfortunately tell this story. So well done you for making it and shine a light on those families and those people, and may we never go through something like that ever again. So thank you for making that. This, you know, was a story that we really appreciated having at New Filmmakers LA. It was really amazing to partner with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, not bad, partnering with the Oscars. And under the fantastic month of celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, which showcased some of the greatest talented emerging filmmakers. How was that experience for you being part of that?
Yeah, let me collect myself here. It was, I mean, this week has been amazing. I met so many great filmmakers, you know, Miguel Angel, Gabriela, I mean, so many, Joao, like they've reached out. They were so touched. And by my film, I was touched by their films. I felt so honored to be in this lineup. But this is an amazing lineup. One of the things that I really felt honored to do is that, I mean, this is New Filmmakers LA. It's a big film festival, and it's also partnered with the Academy, and there's, you know, Hollywood Foreign Press, which is like all these like great, you know, institutions that one would think wouldn't, you know, take a chance on a film that's a little bit controversial, like Manzanal, that points a finger at something that a lot of people don't want to have the fingers pointed at. And I just was super honored that, you know, New Filmmakers LA and the Academy and the governing body, the people who chose this film, decided to play it. That, you know, it was a courageous step. I think it's a courageous step for any film festival to say, let's put this film, you know, on screen. And
well, you deserved it. So, you know, saying, like, I mean, kidding me, you're deserving. You know, I'm already captivated by your vision as a filmmaker, which leads me to say, what is next for you?
That's a good question. I have a few things. I've written a few scripts, feature length. I'm working on those. I'm always working on those, and there's people, you know, interested in those, and I'm trying to, like, you know, get those going. But at the same time, you know, in my documentary film approach, I'm not finished yet. I'm not finished with, you know, talking about immigration, talking about these hard issues. I'm working on another documentary right now about, I don't know how many people know about Oscar Alberto Martinez Ramirez, and the young man who was found in a river with his daughter. I'm working on a film about that, how it affected me as a father of a 2-year-old daughter, at a time where, you know, immigration is, you know, at its worst state in the history of our country. And I'm working on that. So yeah, and then Manzanal is not over either. This is a story that I am dedicated to continue to talk about, continue to tell. Yes. You know, Rufina Maya and El Mozote was not the only thing that happened in El Salvador. Yeah. And I'm working on a feature to bring light on the entire involvement of the different governing bodies in that 12-year war that caused such. It's caused irreparable damage. Salvador is still reeling from the damage of that war. So I'm not finished with that one yet.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I you know, from the stories I've heard, there's so many different stories, and you know, you're shedding some light on some darkness, and it needs to be spoken about, and people need to know and understand it. And I'm so glad that you're doing that with the passion that you have. And, you know, I really feel with the films you're creating and making, you know, you're a hero filmmaker, because you're actually shedding light on some situations, and what we can do, as well as learn and enhance as a human being. We can become a better understanding of our world, and hopefully be more humane and kind to each other. And I'm so glad that you're making these films for us. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
No, honestly, just want to finalize and say, for any filmmakers out there that want to follow in your footsteps, do you have any advice that you go by as a filmmaker that helps you on your journey?
That is an amazingly good question. I think the biggest advice that I cling to on a daily basis is if it makes you cry, if it makes you feel deeply, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be afraid of crying, and we shouldn't be afraid of telling people that we cry and telling people that we are sad or that things affect us greatly. I think we are reaching a different point in our evolution as a society where we're no longer shaming, or hopefully we will stop shaming people for having mental, emotional, all these other issues, things that come from real trauma, real grief that we don't even understand. I think I'm not going to speak for the Black community, but the Black community is reckoning with something that for 400 years has caused tremendous trauma to their community. And similar, we as Latinos, Latinx people, Mestizo people, we have been dealing with stuff that we don't even know where it's coming from. And I think the most important thing is to find where these things are coming from, follow that, and film that, because that helps people heal, and it'll help you heal too as a filmmaker.
You're the best, Jon. You're just the best. I'm so glad you're making films. I swear, honestly, really happy you're making films. We need you. We need you making films. You are enhancing our human brains, minds, and like you said, you're helping people heal and helping people learn. And I think, like you said, it's great. It's good to cry because it shows that we're affected, by something. And I'm just crying thinking about your next films and what you're doing, because you're making very important things. And so just please keep making more movies for us. That's all I can ask of you. Okay.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. Thank you guys for doing this. This has been amazing. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Jon.